the president has said, Chamisa is free at any time to join the platform of POLAD tomorrow if he wants to.
POLAD, uko atiende. Ndawa imi mukada kundiende kunotamba kuinda muherisa dzamutekwe. Pandino nyura ndamezwa nengwena munozoti waitambire murwizimomo. Rwizi runongwena harungopindwi unokupwa usikazivi.
Ndati ndichambodla mari estate ndiri mu9th floor paSheraton Harare, Sheraton Hotel. Chambodla mari yenyika vana Chamisa vachiramwa chilaza. Ngavaramwe vana Chamisa estate chikrova hatimire essential sutu yangu. Chambodla mari yenyika pano paSheraton chikurukura national dialogue tione zvinofamba zvichienda kupi. Ya tisu vacho
Mothlante yenyu wana baba ndimi makaramba kuteerera mashoko zvinodiwa namusiki chona ikasanganyika.
Welcome to the most watched political socio-economic show in Zimbabwe, The Free Talk, proudly brought to you in partnership with the Frederick Newman Foundation. And I, as always, your host, Dara Blessed Mhlanga. Now, Zimbabwe is not a one-party state. It's a multi-party democracy, so to speak. In other circles, they argue that there is a move to ensure that Zimbabwe becomes a one-party state, that all political parties become subservient to the ruling ZANU-PF, which in its ZANU-PF, the ruling party, which in its own has said that it is going to be rolling to an unstoppable win ahead of the 2023 general elections. And ZANU-PF has been the sole ruling party since we attained independence in 1980. With President Kenan Banana, then President Robert Mugabe, and then coming to now the Second Republic, that is called the Second Republic, with President Emmerson Mnangagwa. Now, to discuss this, we are discussing the state of political parties in Zimbabwe. And to discuss this, I'm joined by different political party leaders from different political parties, but all these, they are players in the political dialogue that is POLAD. We are going to discuss the state of politics in Zimbabwe. Is Zimbabwe heading to being a one-party state? Now, this is the Free Talk. I just want to welcome you, gentlemen, and thank you very much for joining us on this program, The Free Talk. In studio, I'm joined by the president of the Zimbabwe Partnership, Innocent Netanyahu. Thank you very much for coming through, sir.
Thank you for the invitation.
I'm also here joined by Kwanele Hlabangan. I pronounce that right? Hlabangan. Yeah, it was the V as well. Okay, Hlabangan, president of the Republican Party of Zimbabwe. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm also joined by Dr. Willard Mugadza, the president of Bethel Christian Party, BCP. Thank you very much, President, for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Amazing. And I'm also joined by Divine Hove, President of the Nationalist Alliance Party of Zimbabwe. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me, Blessed.
Now, I'll start with you, if you'd allow me to call you with your first names. Leaders belong to the people. Innocent, just talk to me about what is the state of opposition political parties in Zimbabwe?
I would say, in Zimbabwe, we have got two polarized kind of opposition parties. I wouldn't group them in the same bracket. We have the political parties that are pro-Zimbabwe. Then we have the political parties that are anti-Zimbabwe. Why do I say that? They've got their own narrative, and we've got the other political parties that are saying, yes, we don't agree with ZANU-PF, but what can we do to complement and collaborate? So when you look at political parties in Zimbabwe, you have to look at them in those two brackets. There are those that are saying, our duty is just to oppose. We're going to oppose. We don't need to agree with you. You won elections. Go ahead. The mandate to govern is yours. Then you have this bracket where the political parties are saying, well, fine, you won, but there was an invitation for us to come and try and influence, try and advise. So you have that kind of opposition again, who don't agree with ZANU-PF, but they're saying, well, that's an opportunity to try and collaborate, to try and complement.
I'll come to you, President of BCP, and say, in your view, do you think that we have a competent opposition politics in Zimbabwe that is capable of bringing an alternative view and a different dimension of doing things?
Thank you very much for the question. When you look at the state of the opposition politics in our country, one of the major problems that we must properly characterize is where we're coming from first as a nation. So when you are looking at the history of the country itself, in terms of the political parties that were involved in the liberation of this country, you already see the problems that we had in terms of being put into brackets. When you become an opposition political party, the philosophy that we ran with from the time of independence to where we are to this day is largely influenced by the Western type of opposition politics, which is quite detached from the history of this nation. So when you look at competencies of opposition political parties, we must look at it in terms of ideology. First of all, do we understand our history as a nation? And then when you form your own political party, are you going to fit into the bracket of Western opposition defined political parties? That is where I want to answer the question of competence. We must understand the history of the nation. If we had the political parties that were involved in the liberation of this country, then they attempted to involve into Western characterized democracy as well, that gave us huge problems. So when you look at issues of competencies, we must be able to clearly assess, one, the history of the country, where are we coming from, where are we going? And then secondly, the issue of political ideologies that then have created huge problems for us to be where we are. So until that matter is properly ventilated in terms of competencies of opposition political parties, where we are today, as opposition political parties, we have refused to fit into the Western type of opposition politics, where success is defined in terms of maybe demonstrations or just being very insulting to those who are in power. So we have to then properly characterize the competencies of opposition political parties in that particular light.
Divine, do you look at the Nationalist Alliance as a party that can remove ZANU-PF from power?
I have a problem with that initial statement that you say to remove. And this is what I think exhibits the fundamental problems that we have in our country. The proper political ideology that we must teach ourselves to adopt is and should be over and above the idea of removing a political party. And my party takes a lot of effort into trying to conscientize people to divert from that kind of thinking. We have got a political system that is very different from the colonial system.
In the colonial system, the voting process was selective. And so we've got men and women who fought for everybody to be able to vote. Number two, we've got a system that allows us to vote after a certain period of time, in our case, 5 years. What it technically means from the theory of elections is that after a period of elections, all the parties are gone. And we now need new political parties to come into government. It therefore defeats my thinking when people say our agenda is to remove a political party. Because we've got a process that provides for elections to happen and for circulation of political parties. In actual fact, what people don't realize is that even the ruling party, current ruling party, ZANU-PF, when election time comes, they are also endeavoring to be re-elected. So when you say, can we entertain the idea of removing a political party? I have problems with that. And this is where we begin to differ with many.
So why really do you then participate in elections if you do not want to remove the party in power and become the party in power?
There's a difference, Blessing, between removing a political party and winning a contest. If your political understanding of political ideology is sharp enough and is matured enough, you'll see that there's the difference. A political party which you can remove in the correct sense of the word is through anarchy or a coup or anything like that. When you win an election, you have not removed a political party because, as I said, in the eve before elections, all political parties and all major offices cease to exist. How do you remove something which is not there? You can only contest to come into office again. So as it is, right now, I'll surprise many people and I tell you, 2023, 2028, there's nobody in office right now. We know that. And we are working towards to be elected into that space. It's unimaginable from a person who understands political language and political philosophy to believe that 2023, 2028, ZANU-PF is in power. It's wrong. It's unconstitutional. It's not practical. So you cannot work to entertain your thought into thinking that you want to remove a political party unless, if you're planning a coup, if you're planning to forcibly remove a government using unconstitutional means. Otherwise, if your idea is to go through the process of elections when elections have been called for, remember the president will call for elections, and at that time, read the constitution, it will tell you how offices are dissolved, how parliament is dissolved, everything ceases to exist. The president remains the president. He only remains the president for purposes of not emptying the void. But as soon as somebody is declared, the winner must be declared by the commission, and the Chief Justice will swear in a new president.
I want to come to you. I will come back and test some of the issues that you raised there. But finally, yes. Let's talk about capacities of opposition political party. Do they have capacity? Because we saw in the 2018 general elections, most of the opposition political parties do not even get to as close as 1% of the vote.
Yeah, to some extent, thank you for the question. To some extent, I think opposition political parties in this country, they enter the race handicapped. It's an unfair race. When we get into a race, if you look at athletics, we are all on the same line. But when you start a race and the other guy is already 100 meters, obviously you know the result is he gets the leverage. We, as political players, we are advocating for the level playing field. One, in the area of resources, because politics is a very expensive game. You need resources to run an election. And the current ruling party and the main opposition, that is MDCT or MDC Alliance, they are at an advantage because they qualify for funding. So one of the things that we're advocating for is for all political parties in Zimbabwe to receive political funding or assistance, because as you know, as you are aware, we're not allowed to get foreign funding as political parties. So what we've been doing as parties is that we've been financing this thing from our own legal resources. But given an opportunity, one would fundraise enough resources to be able to run an effective election. Then second, in terms of capacity, politics is a game of ideas. We all have ideas, and your ideas get tested on an election field. So we are ready, as opposition, we think we have the capacity. And the electorate, yes, they respond otherwise. But I will talk for my own political party. When I entered the race in 2018, it was really at the last minute, 11th hour. And I wouldn't say I campaigned, but I was excited or surprised by the result that I got that says in the next election, surely you should expect better results, because we entered the race when we didn't even have resources. So I feel that as opposition politicians, we are handicapped at the moment.
At least we have the same shirts, eh?
No, mine is thinner.
But I want to, you spoke about anti-Zimbabwe political parties and pro-Zimbabwean political parties in the opposition. How do you determine that this opposition political party is anti-Zimbabwe?
It's simple, because like what Doc was saying, we're coming from a history where there was colonialism, slavery, oppression, racism. And we do have the Liberation Party fighting that war. So I see the political dispensation, then the democratic dispensation, where you've got the late Tsvangirai coming in. But where we are in right now, we find it's an economic dispensation. But in the simple of what I'm saying is that you look at the thesis. If you are anti-thesis, you are not for Zimbabwe. But if you are synthesizing, then you are for Zimbabwe. You don't have to agree with ZANU-PF, but the foundation has to be the same. So I see every genuine opposition party has to build on the foundation of the liberation agenda, the reasons why we went to war.
Are you at liberty to share with us the names of the political parties that you say they are anti, so that people have an understanding?
In every political party that campaigns for sanctions, that demonstrated foreign embassies holding placards saying it's too late to lift sanctions, every political party that has said land reform was theft, every political party that does violent demonstrations. Demonstrations are constitutional, but the violent ones. Every political party that...
Name them. Are you afraid of naming them?
I mean, you can solve the X. You can find the X.
You're a political leader, and political leaders,
you know,
it's
not good to, it's not good to be norm calling, but I think information that is available right now, if you go and say it's too late to lift sanctions, just go on the internet, you will find the political party and the regalia. You will find the individual even in the name. I don't believe in name calling, because I'm talking of the political party, not the individuals in that political party.
But because it then becomes difficult for us to continue a conversation, because you are not forthcoming with the name of the political party to say this political party, so that we can test your assertions. But that is, it may be.
Well, the difficulty of it is that that particular party, it is split into about 11. So amongst, you know, they share the same name, and you find that there is party A of that same name that is now progressive. Then there's party B, which is not progressive. So they're about 11, but they share the same name. But I think you will know that the late President Tsvangirai of the MDCT, he on record said land reform was theft. And he on record said, let's cut electricity, let's do several things. So
but his party was bigger and more popular than yours, yet you call it anti-Zimbabwe.
Yeah, actually you have to be majority to do bad things. It's not always that when you are majority you can do the good things, isn't it? You can be a majority for the wrong things.
But then the people of Zimbabwe want the bad things. Is that what you're saying?
No, they don't want. I think
why are
it's
they voting for a party that has bad things?
You know, in politics, it's a game of manipulating the majority whose post-electoral, whose post-college literacy is drastically low. Don't assume that everyone knows. You can capture people with the information. We no longer fight in Mozambique or Zambia. We fight battle here. So there can be misinformation, there can be miseducation. And to a good degree, our people are captured by that. You know, the lie can be so popular. Because you're a politician, your duty is to manipulate people. And they just go for it. And actually, 80% of the people just do what they are told. There are only 20% who care to investigate and say, I think this is true. So yes, you can have a majority of fools voting for the wrong things.
We'll come back to that aspect. But I want to come to you, and you were talking about our history and the issues like that. Do you, when some people say that being in POLAD and having received some trinkets from the ruling ZANU-PF through government, you are now thinking like ZANU-PF, and therefore we are heading to a one-party state? What would be your reaction to that?
When you are looking at what POLAD has done and its involvement with small political parties, if you want to put it like that, my response is very simple. And you know, when you are looking at the value of an idea, it is not in numbers. So what President Mnangagwa has done is to respect the voices of the people who voted for us. They said, SBCP, you have got people that voted for you. What kind of ideas did these people vote for? Can you come on the table and share these ideas with us? So what President Mnangagwa has done with POLAD, which we really are very grateful for, is to recognize and respect every voice in this nation matters. And that is the approach that he has taken at POLAD. So when we are sitting there, negotiating, advancing the general causes and the problems that our people are having in this nation, he listens. We have had interactions, I'll give you these examples. We have had interactions, for example, with Interministerial Task Force for COVID-19. All the ministers came to sit with us as POLAD. We wanted to find out from them what is the national plan in terms of the COVID pandemic. So we have had interactions with Minister Mtuli. He does these things, and then we invite him to our POLAD meetings to explain, not in a hurry. Initially when he came, he also assumed, like most people, that, okay, these people might not be as competent like he had asked. Then when he found out that these people are well prepared and we have got robust discussions, then now when he attends our meetings, when we invite him as POLAD to share ideas, interrogate what is presented to the nation, and we also provide alternative solutions, which they have actually taken on board quite a number of times. So that is the value that you find when you are sitting there at POLAD. And deliberately, our meetings usually are not covered by the media because of their robust engagement that they are involved. Whether we are talking directly to the president himself or his team, we have got very robust, candid interrogations.
You say that he has done something, the president has done something. Do you then think what he has done has shown that the President Emmerson Mnangagwa is a good leader?
President Mnangagwa is quite sincere in moving this country forward. What he has done with POLAD is really extraordinary.
So this country needs a sincere leader, and you would vote for him in 2023?
What this country needs is collective leadership. All right? What that means is that every idea counts. When you go for elections and when the voting is done, whoever has gotten the reins to lead the country must continuously involve the voices of other political parties. We are a very small nation, very, very small nation. And if we are not careful, we will really be captured by the ideologies of Western democracies, like I've said. Mostly, you have seen in other democracies outside ZIM that the Western kind of democracy divides a nation. Hence, I said we must not divorce ourselves from the history of this nation. We have had, for example, yes.
You sit there wearing Western apparel on a Western set TV station, using Western law, running in a country that runs a Western parliament and a Western democracy, and you say we should not be captured by the West. What exactly are you saying?
What I'm saying is that we must define our own democracy as Zimbabwe. We have come to a point where we adopted the Western type of democracy at independence. It was necessary for us to do that. But as we evolve 41 years later, we should be able to define ourselves. Who are we as a nation? Where are we coming from? Should the army be involved in the politics of this nation? The war veterans, should they be involved in the politics of this nation? When you look at the Western type of democracy, what does it do? It creates huge gaps between the so-called, those who are leading and those who are not leading. That division, we must be able to close it as a nation. And how do you do that? You move away from Western type of democracy. And I will explain something very critical. When you look at, for example, the 2018 election, if I'm to ask you, I want you to, we are live on TV, did you read the manifesto of Bethel Christian Party yourself?
Yes, I did, of course, because I'm a journalist. I do read, but maybe you can ask for the general.
If you read the manifesto of BCP, then you wouldn't be asking our involvement in POLAD. Why? Because it's already there in our own manifesto that we are a very small country. Everyone must pull together as a nation. So what you find is that most people did not read manifestos of these political parties. That I can tell you for a fact, including the voters themselves. The majority, they only read, either they read the parties that they support, or they did not read at all. Therefore, in terms of competence of the voters, when you read the book Against Democracy by Prof. Brennan, he categorizes voters into three. Number one, they are hobbits. Number two, they are hooligans. Number three, they are Balkans. What are hobbits? Hobbits, they vote because the Constitution says at 18 you've got the right to vote. They don't understand anything about the GDP of a country. Number two, you've got hooligans. What are hooligans? It defines them as the group of voters who, despite the shortcomings of their political parties, they continue to vote. Then number three, Balkans. What kind of a group is that? It is those voters who appreciate the matters at hand. All right. So they read the manifestos and then they vote for the candidate that is called the best manifesto. Now, what you find in our country is that we are not there yet. Hence, we are saying we must not divorce ourselves from the history of this nation.
As you posit your line of thinking, what is the majority of the voters in Zimbabwe? Are they hobbits? Are they Balkans? Are they hooligans?
That's a very interesting question. Actually, the majority of the voters in this country, you should be able to, if you combine the hooligans and the hobbits, they are the majority of the voters in this country. You go for the hooligans, the hobbits, you combine them, they become the majority voters. But otherwise, in terms of competence, if we are to ask the voters, there were 23 presidential candidates, and there were 23 manifestos, including the leading journalists in this country. They have not read our manifestos.
What are you then doing? Because it is your responsibility to interest people, because there is what interests the public and what the public must be interested in.
That is
what are you doing to ensure that the people then begin to understand what you stand for? Because right now, to be very honest, people think you stand for getting cars from POLAD.
That is quite a wrong thinking. And that is the beauty of POLAD. That is why I said this is where President Mnangagwa did something extraordinary. And I want to believe with his team, they read our manifestos as opposition political parties. So instead of having those, a manifesto is a summary of ideas. So what did he do? He said, because we have seen the value of ideas in all these manifestos, can you come and expound as we move the nation forward? Because the manifesto is a living document. So that is the beauty of POLAD. What you are asking is exactly what you are doing now at POLAD. We get to influence governance in this nation in terms of policy direction. And we have done so very, very well, an excellent working relationship. And we hope whoever wins in 2023 must reconvene another POLAD. It has to be like that so that we all move in the same direction.
I want to come back to you. You raised something that would have been interesting for scholarly study, the difference between winning and removing a political party. But where from I stand, I find it the same, because when you win, you remove something and you get into place. But anyhow, when Joyce Mujuru lost in the last election, she's said that Zimbabwe, at the present moment, as it stands, is a two-party state. Do you think that your political party has the wherewithal to become a major political party and take up the space in politics and lead direction for the development and advancement of this country?
Well, Blessed, first of all, I'm worried that a sound journalist of your making can fail to distinguish removing a party and winning an election. I'll give you the football example. When the season ends, we start a new season, right? And there is a team that endeavors to win the cup for that year. Does it then mean you have removed them? Or they just won the league? So you choose to believe where you want to say, we have won the league or we have removed. From our ideological point of view and from our understanding of politics, our politics are kind of crippled. And this is what the doctor was trying to explain. We have got to understand the historical problem that we have. From a point of view where people are not allowed to vote, like in the colonial era, there is no option that you have to be in government except to remove. Because the election process affords you an opportunity to choose who is going to be in government for a certain period. And if you read carefully the Constitution, it says at a certain point, certain institutions cease to exist. And as I said, even the political parties and political office holders that are in office at that moment, they will cease to exist unless if it's ceremonial. Therefore, you cannot afford to entertain the thought that we are now removing a party. The best, most mature, most progressive way is to think we are now fighting to win an election. Now, it may take the nation a lot of time to understand and grasp that, but that's the fact. That's the truth. There's an adage that it does not matter how much a false narrative stays in office. If it's not true, it's not true. I think the first 7 years of your life, you were told 1 + 1 is 2, 10 minus 20, it can't. Did you not believe that? It can't. You lift your hand and say, it can't. 10 minus 15, it can't. But when you went to Form 1, you were told it's actually possible. You can subtract 10 from 15 and you get -5. That's how it is. I cannot comment on what Maimi Juru thinks as to her thought that this is a two-party state, because if we are defining the size of political parties to mean how many parties there are in that country, that could be a line of thinking. I cannot answer for her. But as long as you go to ZEC, that should be our starting point. And you say at ZEC, how many political parties do we have? And ZEC says, we have 170 political parties. What in the world can you use to qualify and say we have one-party state or two-party state? Yet, there is an institution that has been set up to govern and administer the running of elections, which is telling you officially that we have 170 political parties. And then you say we are a two-party state. So you've got to realize the difference between two major political party states and a two-party state. Those are already different things. So I cannot agree when I'm told that we are a two-party state or we are a one-party state. I can only agree, perhaps, that we've got two major political parties. And for me, those are two separate issues which, when I'm discussing and engaging, my line of thinking changes. When I'm discussing that there's two major political parties, I'm concerned for my party. How can I get to being one of the recognized major political parties? When I'm told that we are a two-party state, I'm thinking, does the law permit for more than two parties? It does. So that ceases to be a problem.
She used the results to gauge that aspect, to say this is a two-party state, because generally the voting patterns showed that people, when they went to elections, they were concerned primarily on just the MDC alliance and the ZANU-PF. And then she then removed herself from politics, acknowledging that aspect. Instead of bogging down on the matter of semantics, my question to you was, do you think that you can move your political party from the fringes there to the point where it becomes a major political party that is recognized, and to say that this becomes also a major political party?
It's very possible.
If it's very possible. I think if you go back into history, there's a time that ZANU-PF was small. Today they are big. It's very possible. I do not have any reason to believe that we are absolutely in a state where it's impossible to grow a political party. I think if you actually went back beyond 1999, probably the MDC was even little known in many circles, but they've grown, right? So the fair answer to your question is yes, I believe it's possible. I wouldn't be wasting time thinking that we are setting up something when I know that it cannot grow. I believe it will grow.
Amazing. Let me come to you, President, and say, do you think that you being in POLAD is actually beneficial or endearing you to the electorate and improving you as a political entity?
Thank you for that question. One of the challenges we have as Zimbabweans, politicians or political parties, is that when elections come, we remain in the election mode. Elections are an event, they come and go. In fact, if you look at the dates of elections, just 3-4 days. But in between the next election, there is work that has to be done. Remember, when you are campaigning, you are promising people something. So for me, POLAD has given me that opportunity to be able to serve the electorate that I promised. That, look, yes, I'm not in office, but let me share my ideas. Because like he says, I'm not the opposition, an opposition political party, but I lead an alternative party of the future. That is growing. As we speak now, we are growing a party that is going to challenge ZANU-PF. Yes, we won't use the word remove like he says, but maybe we can use the word replace. I don't know. We can look for other terms, but we are not in this just to accompany others. We are in this for the end game. But between the next election, we are profiling our ideas, our solutions, and we are privileged to have audience with the head of state, who happens to be Nangago and the ZANU-PF, while others decide not to come to the table. And I'll talk about POLAD. POLAD is a voluntary organization. I wasn't part of POLAD myself at inception. I was a critic like everybody else. I used to read about POLAD and say, these guys are kept up. But the minute I got there, not because I was given anything, I mean, people talk about these 4 wheels were given a few hours ago. We got into POLAD, there was nothing that we were getting, but I just enjoyed the company of people with great ideas, where we share our ideas with government, and they take some of the issues that we raise, and it has given me a platform, almost like we are on a roof, and people see me there. I don't know if you've heard of HstvZim, but now because there's POLAD, you've heard of HstvZim. Otherwise, I was just going to remain there, still trying to grow my party and wait for the next campaign. But POLAD has given me that opportunity to be able to address the nation and demonstrate to them that there is a leader of tomorrow who's able to proffer certain solutions.
Yes. But when you say you proffer your ideas and solutions to POLAD, I know that when you met in Kwekwe, you agreed as POLAD that the constitutional amendments have to be part. And Professor Love Mumaduku came out and said that this was our position. Immediately after that, I think it was in a weekend, on a Monday, government went ahead to Gazette. Totally ignored you.
100%. Not all the issues that we bring on the table are adopted.
But this is a major issue, don't you think?
All issues are major. In fact, POLAD has 6 thematic committees, and that talks to the economy, governance issues, and we raise all these issues on the table. And it depends on the government, because we don't force them to listen to us, but we give them the opportunity to say, look, we are in office, here are the ideas. If they decide not to accept or adopt, it's okay. But at least historically people know that these people tried. Because remember, do you think people know? Oh, they know. They are quite aware. They know. Don't even doubt that they know. They are aware of our work. Yes, we still need to do more in terms of publicity, but people are aware. That's why they are criticizing POLAD. And most of the critics are angry on behalf of certain individuals. They're not really thinking straight. They just want to oppose this thing. But if they sit down and listen to what we stand for, they begin to appreciate the work of POLAD.
There is an economic crisis in Zimbabwe. Do you agree?
Yes, there is. Yes, there is.
What, and you say that POLAD is this platform of sharing ideas and ending this crisis.
Right.
Now, Have you failed to end it?
Well, we are not the government. And I always say that people deserve their own government. People voted for people in office, for two political parties. The one that is running the country and the one that is in parliament. But we came in with our ideas. Like I say, we have got 6 thematic committees. We have a committee that is in the economic committee. He can tell you the work that they've done in their committee towards the ideas on the economy. I'm in re-engagement. I've done a lot of work in engaging our diplomatic community, explaining to them what POLAD is, because I think they read it elsewhere, but we're able to engage them. The Americans, the British, we have engaged them. And we continue to engage them to explain our position on reforms, the work that we do. Because behind the scenes, there's a lot that we are doing as POLAD.
Yes. I want us to just, to look at the negatives that the majority or a number of outspoken people have spoken about POLAD. Yes. Do you believe that they have currency?
I don't think we're talking of the majority. We're talking of very few people, because the majority in this country run into millions of people. And just the few people who are privileged to have access to social media and other platforms, then they will push that narrative that there is some negativity around POLAD, which is not true. Because POLAD is just talking national development. We don't talk anything foreign. We are simple profiling solutions towards national development. The same thing that you hear about government policies, we simply come in there and say, can we adopt this? Can we do this? And we are persuasive. We are not confrontational. We don't force government to adopt our ideas. Yes.
I'll come to you. Do you have any disagreements with the way this country is being run?
Yeah, ideologically, yes. But we are in POLAD. We've got different ideas. I would say POLAD has provided a convenient platform where we may try and re-rail the country or support what is good. So your question is saying the disagreements, they are there. Because ideologically, I'm predominantly Pan-Africanist. In fact, Zimbabwe Partnership is like you calling me innocent, but the full name becomes Straight Black Pride, Zimbabwe Partnership. That name already tells you that I'm predominantly Pan-Africanist. We are against homosexuals, or against lesbians, or against mortgaging our resources to be it the Chinese or be it the West. So those will be my disagreements. But you must respect that ZANU-PF, it obtained an overwhelming majority to form that government. So
we're not arguing with that.
Yeah, I know, I got you.
I want to understand a reason why you would, in 2023, for instance, stand up and say vote for us instead of ZANU-PF.
I would say vote for us because I think even the finance minister, you can look at his policies, he kind of depends on the West. The IMF, the Bretton Woods institutions. You have read Confessions of an Economic Hitman. In fact, at the launch of POLAD, the president was asked, have you read that book? He said, I've read it. But he says he knows how to deal with them. So ideologically, I don't believe in prejudicing local people. Or there's a controversy, actually, compensation for land reform. I will accept because it's constitutional, Section 295 and 3 to compensate. But ideologically, I don't believe because actually we move for, say, let there be reparations because 400 years of slavery, colonialism, almost 100 years, and there is no reparation, no compensation, no restitution. So there are a lot of things that ideologically I disagree with the ruling party. And actually, I think if I am to contest in 2023, wow, if I don't win, I will be very close. But eventually, I will defeat because the ideology that led to independence was our elders being predominantly Pan-Africanist and opposed to racism, white supremacy. But because there are illusory things, there are, like he's saying, Doc, there is a lot of, actually constitutionalism and democracy. It's an opportunity to capture African nations. It's not a coincidence that all 54 countries, maybe our president is closer, or Magufuli, the late president, but most of them, they're just like puppets of the Western countries. So ideologically, I've got a lot of things that I don't agree with the ruling party. But I agree with them on the collective working together, because it has got to be hands on deck to deliver on Zimbabwe. Earlier, I said there was a political liberation where the common enemy was Ian Smith, and whether you were ZIPRA or ZANU-PF force or an auxiliary, you knew your enemy and you were fighting that. Then we go into the democratic dispensation where you had the protests, stairways. They were justified, those things, because it was that phase. But right now, we're going into economic development.
But you say economic development, and there's no economic development.
No, it's there. Unfortunately, you guys actually are not doing a good job, you, the journalists. Some people are not, some journalists are not even interested in investigating. There's a lack of investigative journalism. You just center on politics. But if you are to go down and do the statistics on the infrastructure, how many dams have been built, what has been the improvements.
How much is your civil servant, an average civil servant, earning in this country?
No, you have to earn what you produce. You know, civil servants are not broiler chickens, where you would want just to, they don't know where the food comes from. The economic growth, it has to grow. As it grows, then you improve the salaries. But there's this mentality whereby you would just want to say, give us the US dollars, give us the money, but where is it coming from?
I didn't talk about US dollars. I asked you a simple question. How much is your average civil servant?
I think it's around 320 USD right now. If I'm to use the formal exchange rate, it's around 320 USD, which is an improvement from where it was when there was a currency migration. Remember, they were saying, we're earning 30 US, we're earning 20 US equivalents. But right now, in less than 1.5 years.
The World Bank says more than half of Zimbabweans are living below US $1 a day, and they're in abject poverty. Now, a nation of 16 million, half of them, more than, around 41% of them are living in abject poverty, and you say that there is economic development. How do you merge that with your thinking of the collective?
Well,
because your party stands for the collective, and the collective are poor, and you are saying there's economic development.
The same World Bank, he has talked about POLAD. POLAD has got those themes, the governance, which is led by Professor Maduku. I mean the economy there. In 2020, isn't it? We invited World Bank, IMF, development partners, and I can quote directly what the World Bank says. It says, when your economy is now 65 to 70% informal sector, that is your economy. So they're contradicting themselves, because Zimbabwe is predominantly informal sector. But the land reform, the mine claims, there are about 105,000 people that were given mine claims. And those people, you are not going to employ them, even if you build new industries. They are used to mining, in predominantly a US dollar sector, the mining sector. Land reform, about 605,000 family heads, not individuals. Now take the average family African unit, maybe you are taking care of 6 or 10 people. Those were millions of people that are beneficiaries of land. My very own mother.
So in your statement, are you saying that the people in Zimbabwe...
No, they are not. No, the majority actually live in gold. They are growing their own food. It's a minority, because it's less than 30% who are in the formal sector. These are the ones that are in urban mostly. But most of our people, there was a black empowerment, there was a land reform, there was mining, and so those people, they earn a lot. Look at how many...
These things...
Yeah, they've improved. That's why they've built houses. 2.6 million houses. The car population right now, see how much we import. But there's a high unemployment. But how come the car population is almost over 2 million right now? Houses which we build by cash, not with loans from the bank. Just look around, people build those houses. So our people are doing well, but they're in the informal sector. In the formal, I agree with you, there's need to improve the salaries. Maybe right now, maybe take them to 400 USD. I would agree with you there. But not to say the majority of Zimbabweans, because we have 14.65 million population, and about almost 9 million are beneficiaries of the land reform and the mine claims. So it's a minority.
So these are the ideas we share, POLAD.
Nah, you asked me to disagree. Yeah, they've got their own.
How to come to the controversial issue, the elephant in the room, where you justified to be given cars to drive cars by government, in your view?
All right, what you must understand, number one, is what POLAD does. When POLAD was established, we have been coming, attending POLAD meetings using our own vehicles. We're involved already then in terms of various national developmental issues. And we're using our own resources from 2019. And no one raised an issue. People were quite happy with that. You see, the people were attacking POLAD and some were praising POLAD, but we were using our own resources. So from 2019, 2020, 2021, a formal request was then made for us to be capacitated in order to increase our visibility and also to just complement government work in terms of what government is doing and what POLAD is meant to be doing. So there was absolute justification in terms of us getting the vehicles.
But you're not a government employee, you're not a government official. POLAD is a side thing. Why should taxpayers fund that? When taxpayers made their decision that ZANU-PF should run government and should be responsible for their welfare.
The taxpayers from my party did not vote for ZANU-PF. So they are quite happy, members of PCP, that the government was able to use their own taxes in acquiring the vehicle for me. And I just want to extend your question a little bit further. When you look at the political parties financing model that we have in this country, I'm a taxpayer. The members from my party did not vote for ZANU-PF. It means they do not support ZANU-PF, they do not support the MDC. But they're also paying what? Taxes. But in terms of the Political Parties Financing Act, their taxes are used to finance ZANU-PF, their taxes are used to finance MDCT or MDCA. They're not happy with that. So already the financing or the model of financing of political parties is quite skewed in this country. Hence, my position that there's absolute justification in terms of us being capacitated. And they're just off-road vehicles. They're not luxury vehicles. It's just an ordinary off-road vehicle.
Someone would say that the car that you're driving would have served better if it was taken as an ambulance and put in Nembuzia Gokwe or in Vukururu, so to speak, instead of giving you, because you chose to be a political leader and you chose to sacrifice to ensure that you save the nation. But now you are being saved by the nation.
It's very good thinking. It's logical. It's reasonable. But that's not what is happening. Economics is about allocation of scarce resources. It's one of the options that has happened. There is no way that we are going to stand out as a party and as a member of POLAD and say that is unreasonable thinking.
Because you benefit.
No, because it's logical. But when something is logical, it does not make it necessarily wrong. When something is illogical, it does not make it wrong either. So the thinking of people, because the problem that we may create here is a conflict of whether it was right or not, and whether the people are justified or not, which is not the issue. The people are raising concerns that the economy is not doing well, people are not well paid, hospitals do not have ambulances. That's a concern to be addressed, right? But when you then reconcile it with, say, how then did you get vehicles? Why did you get vehicles? When we speak that the vehicles are going to extend the work of POLAD, it does not mean that the people's thinking is wrong. It still means that there must be more ambulances in the hospitals. Their thinking is right. You get the sense.
Priority, obviously, to them is wrong.
It would make it look like there is absolutely no ambulance that has been bought. But I'm saying, bless it, let us try and run away from a point of either or. Remember, a lot of things are happening simultaneously. If we corner ourselves into a saying that instead of buying POLAD vehicles, you could have bought ambulances, we could have somebody come here and demonstrate to you how many ambulances have been bought. So let's not define our arguments by either or, left, right, right, wrong, left, right, right. Governing and doing decisions is a collective of a lot of things. But the point that I want to stress is we should not allow ourselves to degenerate into a situation where we are saying because we received vehicles, therefore the people are wrong. Therefore we can't listen to the people. Therefore the people are crazy or jealous. Or it's logical. If you listen to what the people are saying, it's very logical. In fact, some political parties really had to dig down into their consciences to say, do we take those vehicles? But I would ask you a question and say, as a journalist, how many of you guys have taken time to find out a single report of a POLAD meeting? Just to find out what you guys discuss. How did you come to the resolution of buying cars? But because the cars are out and everything is happening, suddenly there are many comments. So you see, we've got to train ourselves into a culture of having correct facts and not cornering ourselves into either or.
I think the reason why this gets to this point is that, for instance, we have a video of one of you POLAD leaders, maybe on the top of Rainbow Towers, and then, you know, that video, and this person saying, the government, and those things. Now, this is what people would then see, and eventually it culminates to getting cars.
Yes.
And you have trips to Nyanga, flying to Vic Falls just to get a jab, or, you know, a vaccination. And then whilst you are flying from Harare to Victoria Falls, you are going to be given vaccination by a poorly underpaid nurse whose children are starving. And they look at you as a political leader and say, do you care about me?
I said it's sensible what the people are thinking. It's very sensible when people see a video circulating and they think these guys are just enjoying the money. But as leaders, as politicians, we cannot allow ourselves to stop at doing what is right just because of a perception. But that perception does not stop us to say that perception is crazy or it's stupid or it's wrong. We take cognition of the perception and we account ourselves to a point of responsibility to say, gentlemen, if this is what we are going to do, there must be fruits. And remember, people are free to do and say whatever they want, right? We should not corner ourselves into justifying whether that video was the correct position of POLAD or not. Really, it's not. And at the same time, we should not try and justify that video. We will be doing ourselves a big disfavor. What we should be discussing is to say we hear what the people are saying. And these are the issues that we are actually saying to government. That's why I asked you, have you taken time to read any report of POLAD? You would find how we speak against corruption. You would find how we speak against human rights abuses. But we also speak against sanctions. So I think the people of Zimbabwe are used to, it's either you're on the left side or you're on the right side. They cannot accommodate that somebody can be sober enough to balance both. You understand? So I will not sit here and try and justify why we got cars. But what I can promise the nation is what POLAD endeavors to do is going to bear fruits. And to say to the nation, your sentiments, your comments, your feelings are well logical. Because of the state of the economy, I don't think the government has denied that the economy is in a bad shape. If you listen to any government program, they agree that the economy is in a bad shape. There is no way that we will sit here and try and give you the impression that the economy is doing well, it's growing, everybody's happy. We are far from that. But when we begin to weigh the two and say, because we are saying we got cars, it means the economy is doing right, we are doing ourselves a big disfavor. It's like the tenant and lodger situation. To say, why are you frying chicken when you owe me rent?
I mean, is that not logical?
It is logical. It is logical, very logical. To the tenant, it's logical. But to the person cooking chicken, it's also logical. But we cannot stand in the corridor and say, okay, so who is right? Why did you cook chicken? And then I'm not going to feed my children because I haven't paid rent? Do I do that? I will try and manage my landlord and say, okay, my landlord is talking sense. Probably I'll cook in the middle of the night so that I don't offend them. I'll watch my steps. I'll be careful. I do not become extravagant because I'm conscious about what my landlord says. But if we reduce ourselves into a nation of where we say, you flew a plane to Victoria Falls, whilst there is something that is not done, I think we are being unfair to ourselves. The objective of that national program, if you are honest with yourself as a journalist, there are prominent journalists. I was going to name names if you asked me. You are scared to ask to say names. I will tell you. Prominent journalists said people should not get jabs. Are we aware of that? Prominent preachers said we are not going to get jabs. This is the gravity of the problem that we had. And a leader decides, let me magnify symbolically this vaccination process by flying leaders into a common place and making sure the whole world gets attention. Look at the figures of vaccination today. There are queues. When we landed in the falls, there were queues of people wanting to be vaccinated. Unashamedly, some of the people that were so vocal against vaccination are getting vaccinated privately and getting those jabs. So now, how do you evaluate, Mr. Blessing, the cost of that trip and the lives that have been saved? Can you put figures to it?
I would not know whether they would not have been vaccinated. Did you not feel one?
We can't tell.
Sorry, Blessed. Sorry. I just want to make a comment on what you said. Very important. You know, we had an option in terms of the vehicles to get them privately without them being branded or anything like that. But for the sake of transparency, as POLAD, a decision was made. Let the nation know. If we had gotten those vehicles privately, we'll be driving around, no one would make a single noise.
Well, but we would know.
But how can you know about the vehicles and you don't know about the meetings?
The principle,
how can you not know about a single report of POLAD?
I want the nation to appreciate one thing.
We would have known.
How come you don't know about a single report of POLAD?
POLAD is
we don't.
No, you
if
don't.
If you did,
absolutely.
You wouldn't
POLAD,
be asking this question.
The principle was on accountability and transparency. We should be prepared to answer questions when they come. Let the vehicles be branded. Let the nation know this is what POLAD is doing. That is the point that I wanted to support from what you were saying.
The people of Zimbabwe, the journalists of this country, have exposed corruption in COVID buying of vaccines.
Yes.
They've exposed things that are actually
very correct.
You think we wouldn't have exposed
my point, Blessing, my point is the journalists have become experts of exposing one side of the story. My question, I'm challenging you. What efforts have you taken as a TV station, as an internet station, to expose the detailed reports of POLAD executive meetings? We've had over 6 of them.
We've done that. You are sitting in this TV station talking to the people. We are giving you
how many years after POLAD was formed?
To explain what POLAD does. The other time we reached out to you, and then you told us, one of your representatives, you were not available. You gave us Professor Love Momadugu. We drove to his university to talk to him about POLAD. We are an alternative voice. We will let you be heard. We will give you a platform to be heard, but we will question you every step of it.
And that is very, very good.
I will say this to you, that there is no free lunch.
Oh, yes.
You were given vehicles.
I think let's clarify issues here. ZANU-PF did not give us vehicles. I know what you are saying. We have not been bought by ZANU-PF. We have been given vehicles by the government of Zimbabwe. You can check with the Ministry of Finance, all the details are there, as to where the money came from, how it was allocated for us. That's another issue. So you can do your own investigation and find out about that. So we are not driving a party vehicle. I think there's that wrong perception. So, and we deserve these vehicles because they are tools of work. Right now, I just drove from the hotel. I can't be doing POLAD work from the pavement. Yeah, I mean, because I'm doing national duty. So I have got to be given airtime to call. I must be in an environment where I can think so that I can do my work. I don't feel this is a luxury. To me, this is a necessity that government saw it fit to give us these vehicles. And like I say, they just came a few hours ago. But we've been doing POLAD work without these vehicles. So we're not driven by freebies or these luxuries. But because we are committed to the work of POLAD, we are committed to see this nation assume its role on the global arena as a progressive nation. And that's why we bring our ideas to the table. Like I said, it is up to the government of the day to listen to us and take our ideas, or they go on and we wait for the next election.
It will never happen in Zimbabwe to have a one-party state. This is why, if you go to ZEC, there are so many parties there. So it will never be one-party state. And the situation of political situation in Zimbabwe on political parties, I think at POLAD, we are actually advocating that every political party should be funded, because we have got our people who want to fund us abroad who are outside Zimbabwe, but because of the constitution, the government does refuse us to get funding from somewhere else. So this is why at POLAD we are saying the government, if it's refusing us to get funding, they should fund us. But one thing you have got to know, what's actually happening into the ruling party that is ruling ZANU-PF. The last general elections, all their T-shirts, they never print them with their own money. They were printed by Chinese. They were funded by external funders. But to us oppositions, they don't want us to be funded by external sponsors. This is one other thing, again, we are saying, if you don't allow us to get funding from outside, the government should fund us. And as we stand on my political party, our theme is, it should not be a Republic of Zimbabwe. That's according to my political party. It should not be Republic of Zimbabwe. This is, where we are coming from. The country was won through guns, right? But we should have a paramount chief. It's not supposed to be a Republic of Zimbabwe. Right, the last words to the viewers that I would want to say is, to be very honest with you, they say, muchivanu chedu mbeva zhinji hadzina masha. So if you think ZANU-PF, the majority, and other people, they think MDC Alliance, number 2 party. No. If you add their votes of 2018, if you add the votes of the president, Emerson Mnangagwa, and add for Chamisa, if you add them, they are not even half of the electoral voters of Zimbabwe. They are not. They are less. So a lot of people right now, as we stand, there is a voting apathy. They only say, kind of voter to be one, kind of voter to be one, which is wrong. If we all go and vote, there will be a new party ruling this country.
Amazing, thank you very much. I will just ask just one of you to give me your closing remarks, because we have run out of time. So just 1 to 2 minutes closing remarks. I don't know who will do it.
I think I'm very grateful that finally people like yourselves are coming on board to talk to POLAD, expose what POLAD is doing and endeavoring to do. I cannot guarantee the goodness of the results of POLAD, but our wish is that we are going to achieve that which the nation should be at. And it is important to realize that if your method of doing your politics is in the left direction, it does not necessarily mean the right side is wrong. This is what we have chosen. We have said to ourselves, gentlemen, if we have got access to sitting with Blessing and talk to him about his suit, isn't it good than to stand on the other side of the wall and say, suti yako yakadai, suti yako yakadai, suti yako dai? I sit with the president in the proximity of 1 meter. What is the value of that? These are decision makers. Than to be on Twitter, to be on Facebook, and just say, we are not happy about this, we are not happy. I tell the president straight up in his face. Whether they do it or they do not do it is another complication of political arrangement, which you say you are a side thing. But the bottom line is the message is getting in. If you look at what Doc said, the 2%, the 1%, the 0. whatever percent that I got is being heard in government, direct, one-on-one. And I will confess something to you. Whenever we are on the ground, people may grumble and say a lot of things. Whenever we are on the ground, do you know what they tell us? Are you guys talking to the president? And when I tell them we are going to have an executive meeting, I get phone calls. Please tell this to the president. Please tell this to the president. What value to the country is that when you've got a link with the president than to have a parliament where people are making noise, insulting each other, and there's no motion that moves? So really, we have felt it within ourselves and are convinced that what we are doing is a positive effort. The results may be something else, but it's the intention that matters. And if you really want to analyze how our parliament has been operating of late, I don't think much progress is being made there. People throwing stones at each other. So I'm happy that you are bringing us on board as a renowned. You said when we were talking off air, you said you are one of the biggest. And I'm sure we are changing a few people's minds right now. And I want to say to the nation of Zimbabwe, give POLAD a chance. Give us a chance. And by the fact that we are associating ourselves with the ruling party does not mean we have been swallowed. It's not possible for us to be swallowed. But it does not mean that some people may not cross over to ZANU-PF. People are crossing over from MDC to ZANU-PF. We may have people crossing over from ZANU-PF to us. But like the doctor said, we should mature into politics of listening to what each and every offer is. Already I hear people say, we are going to have 40 candidates next year. That's good. 40 options. What do you want?
Thank you very much. The tenant is frying chicken and the rent has not been paid. On that note, we come to the end of this amazing discussion that I've had with POLAD leaders, political leaders from different political parties here on the Free Talk. We talk freely here with our partners, Frederick Newman Foundation. We believe that dialogue on socio-economic and political issues is the crux and essence to development in any nation. And we are an alternative, a voice that allows everybody to be heard, regardless of size, regardless of thinking, regardless of political affiliation. We are Heart and Soul TV and radio. And I am Dara Blessed Mhlanga. Until next time, thank you very much for joining us and choosing us as your station of choice. This was the Free Talk, proudly brought to you in proud partnership with the Frederick Newman Foundation and Heart and Soul TV and radio. We believe that dialogue is the crux of development. When people talk to each other, when people listen to each other, development happens. On Free Talk, we believe in political dialogue, economic dialogue, and social dialogue. Everybody must be heard. Everybody has a right to be heard. Free Talk, talking that moves nation. Free Talk, talking that makes a difference. This is the Free Talk.
Thank you.